Was this evil? Or was it the final act of man quietly falling apart while the system looked the other way? He didn't shout. He didn't slow down. He didn't even flinch. Just after 8 p.m. on a warm spring evening in Vancouver, the streets were alive with celebration. It was a family-friendly festival, a weekend gathering that had become a neighborhood tradition. Parents strolled with toddlers balanced on their shoulders. Teenagers laughed as they clutched cotton candy and bubble tea. There were food trucks lining the curb, the faint sound of music coming from a nearby stage, and hundreds of people soaking in the last light of the day. Then everything changed in an instant. Witnesses say it sounded like thunder. Others said it felt like an explosion. But it wasn't a bomb, it was worse. It was a car. A black SUV came roaring down the closed road at full speed. No honking, no hesitation. It didn't try to avoid the crowd. It aimed directly into it. There was no time to react. People screamed. Bodies were thrown into the air like rag dolls. A stroller was crushed under the tires. One woman barely had time to push her daughter out of the way before she was struck herself. By the time the vehicle came to a stop, the aftermath was almost too much to process. Shoes littered the street. Cell phones buzzed unanswered beside pools of blood. A man lay motionless, arms twisted unnaturally. A child cried out for their mother, not knowing she was already gone. 11 people were killed. 37 were injured. And the man who did it? He stepped out of the SUV, adjusted his jacket, and said nothing. No rage. No panic. No remorse. He just stood there. And that's when the questions began. Who was this man? What was his motive? Was this an act of terror? A political message? A hate crime? Or something else entirely? When police arrested him, they didn't find weapons. They didn't find a manifesto. But what they did find was a history. A long, complicated, and deeply troubling history of mental illness, of isolation, of warnings that went unheeded. Doctors had seen him. Social workers had spoken to him. Files had been written, updated, and filed away. But no one had stopped him. And that leaves us with one terrifying question. If this wasn't a sudden snap, but a slow motion descent, why did no one step in before it was too late? Why this street, this night, this community? Why a festival? Why these people? And why, above all, did no one see it coming? Kai-G Lo was invisible. He wasn't a ghost slipping through society, unnoticed. He had a name, a file, a medical record. He had regular, documented contact with mental health services in British Columbia, appointments, evaluations, case notes. There were professionals who knew his history, who tracked the slow unraveling of his mind.
The person we have in custody does have a significant history of interactions with police related to mental health. I can also say with confidence that we do not believe this was an act of terrorism, nor do we believe there are any ongoing threats to our community.
Like so many others navigating Canada's overburdened and understaffed mental health system, he fell through the cracks. Over the years, doctors noted his instability, inconsistent behavior, paranoia, emotional withdrawal. He was prescribed medications. Sometimes he took them, sometimes he didn't. He missed appointments. He showed signs of deterioration. There were moments when he seemed to spiral, but he never made explicit threats, never wielded a weapon, never crossed that invisible line from concerning to dangerous. And in a system already stretched thin, that made all the difference. His friends tried to raise alarms. Some say they noticed he'd become distant. Others recall him making strange, disjointed comments, talking about control, about being watched, about the world not making sense. They told him to get help. Some called clinics. Some didn't know who to call at all. But Kai-G had no violent record, no criminal charges, no official reason for the system to intervene with force. In Canada, the threshold for forced psychiatric treatment is high, and for good reason. It's meant to protect rights. But it also means that many people like Kai-G, who walk a fine line between functioning and collapse, are left largely to manage their illness alone. There was no public warning, no alert, no one flagged him as a risk. There were no restrictions on his ability to drive, no orders to surrender his keys. no monitoring of his medication. On paper, he was just another man with a diagnosis, managing his life. And so, on April 26th, when he got behind the wheel of that black Audi Q5, there was nothing in place to stop him. No barrier, no system, no one. The system didn't miss a red flag. It saw it and waved it through. But that raises a haunting question that many still can't answer. How many others are out there right now, silently slipping, desperately needing help, while no one is watching? After his arrest, Kai-G Lo didn't run. He didn't fight. He didn't scream, deny, or even try to explain. He stepped out of the black Audi SUV, surveyed the scene around him, the bodies, the sirens, the chaos, and simply waited. Some officers said he looked calm. Others described his face as blank, like he didn't even understand what had just happened. As police moved in, guns drawn, voices yelling commands, he obeyed every instruction. He didn't flinch when he was forced to the ground. He didn't resist when the handcuffs were locked around his wrists. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask about the people he'd hit. He didn't ask about the child now lying lifeless, just feet from where he stood. He didn't say a word. In the hours that followed, investigators began to piece together the horror of what had just occurred. 11 people were dead, mothers, fathers, children. More than 30 others were injured, some critically. A vibrant cultural celebration had turned into a mass casualty scene, and the man at the center of it, the one who drove for the crowd like it was nothing, now sat in a holding cell, completely silent. Soon after, formal charges were laid. 11 counts of second-degree murder, multiple counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault. The sheer number of victims meant this would be one of the deadliest criminal cases in recent Canadian history. The public demanded answers. Families demanded justice. But from the very beginning, something about this case didn't follow the expected path. Because once Kai-G Lo was in custody, it became clear this wouldn't be a straightforward criminal prosecution. He didn't confess. He didn't proclaim his innocence. He didn't claim responsibility or offer a motive. Instead, he spoke very little. And when he did, those who heard him describe his words as disjointed, confused, at times almost nonsensical. He seemed detached from reality, unable to process where he was or what he'd done. That raised a crucial question, one that had to be answered before any trial could begin. Was Kai-G Lo mentally competent to stand trial? In Canada, as in many countries, the justice system requires that a person be fit to face prosecution. That means they must be able to understand the nature of the charges against them. They must be capable of communicating with their legal team. And most importantly, they must grasp the gravity of the situation they're in. If they can't, the system can't move forward. Lo was transferred to the Forensic Psychiatric Hospital in Coquitlam, a high-security facility that houses individuals within the justice system who have complex mental health needs. There, doctors began a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation. Their task: determine whether Lo was capable of participating in his own defense, or whether he was too far gone into the depths of his illness to even understand the concept of a trial. For weeks, assessments were conducted, interviews, medical reviews, observations, and the signs were troubling. Lo's mental state appeared fragile. He reportedly spoke in fragments, fixated on abstract fears and disconnected ideas. There were signs of psychosis, paranoia, deep delusions, and beneath it all, a chilling absence of remorse. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't seem to comprehend what had happened. The court proceedings have since come to a near standstill. A hearing is underway to determine his fitness to stand trial. But nothing is guaranteed. The court must weigh psychiatric evaluations and expert testimony. If the judge rules that Kai-G Lo is mentally unfit, then legally he cannot be tried. Not yet. Instead of prison, he would remain confined to the psychiatric hospital under a designation known as unfit to stand trial. In this limbo state, he would not be convicted or sentenced.